Have you ever felt like your own life was playing out in a window you were watching from the outside? You wake up hours after you should. You reach for your phone before you even open your eyes properly. You tell yourself you'll get to it soon, that today will be different, that the real version of your life starts just a little bit later. But that later never shows up. And at the end of another gone day, you lie there again, with the same hollow question sitting on your chest. What am I actually doing with all of this? Most people will hand you the same tired answer. They'll say you're lazy. They'll say you need a better morning routine or a tighter schedule. But here's the thing. Your problem is not a time management problem. What's really holding you back is a much older, much deeper part of your inner world that has never fully agreed to grow up. And here's what makes that so dangerous. A lot of men never resolve this in their 20s. It follows them quietly into their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and beyond. From the outside, they look like functioning adults, but somewhere inside, there is a part of them that flinches every single time life asks them to step up and carry something real. Today, we're going to go deep into the psychology behind why so many men stay stuck in a kind of permanent adolescence. Before we go further, I want to be honest with you. Some of what follows may be uncomfortable. It might push on something tender inside you. But if you can stay present long enough to take it in fully, this might be exactly the thing that finally shifts something. So what is this part of you that resists growing up? And what does it actually look like in real life? Let's begin with the psychology. There is a concept in analytical psychology described as the eternal youth archetype. In everyday language, people recognize it through terms like the eternal boy or the man who never quite lands. When someone is living inside this pattern, it does not mean they are stupid or without ability. Quite the opposite, actually. These are often people with real intelligence, real creativity, and a sense that there is something genuinely special waiting for them. But their dominant trait is an almost desperate craving for unlimited freedom. Freedom defined not as the power to build something meaningful, but as the right to never be pinned down, never responsible for anyone, never making a choice that closes a door. Every option stays open, but no door ever gets walked through. This way of living has been described in psychological literature as a provisional life, and it is one of the most precise phrases I have ever encountered for this pattern. When you are living provisionally, you experience your current life as a kind of rehearsal. This is not your real career. This job is just for now. This apartment is temporary. You would clean it and actually take care of it if it were your real home, but it is not. This relationship might be nice, but it is probably not your truest match. You are just passing through. Because everything feels temporary, nothing receives your full investment. You sit in the stands watching your own life go by. You watch the people around you make hard choices. They take the job. They start the business. They commit to the relationship. They fail sometimes and keep going anyway. Part of you watches all of that and quietly tells itself that you are different, that they are caught in something ordinary while you are still waiting for something more fitting of what you know you could be. But the honest truth hiding underneath that feeling is this. You are not choosing the stands because you are free. You are choosing them because they are safe. When you never commit to one direction, you get to keep believing you could have succeeded at any of them. When you never truly begin, you never have to find out where your actual limits are. You preserve the dream in perfect condition because an untested dream cannot disappoint you. The deepest engine running underneath all of this avoidance is a fear of what reality actually feels like. Reality has edges. It has rejection and competition and slow, boring progress and honest feedback about where you actually stand. In the imaginary version of your life, you are already extraordinary. But the moment you step into the real version, you have to start from where you actually are, which is somewhere near the beginning, like everyone else. And a part of you would rather protect the fantasy than risk finding out what the reality might say back. So, where does this pattern come from? Why does this loop get started in the first place? Here is something that surprises most people. Many men who carry this pattern were exceptionally bright as children. Maybe you were the kid who figured things out fast, who got praised constantly, who was told you were destined for something great. Those words felt good. Of course they did. But they also laid a quiet trap. You began to build your whole sense of who you are around the idea of being special, of having potential that set you apart. The trouble arrives when you enter the real world and discover that potential is not a currency that anyone accepts. The world pays for results. It rewards persistence. And when you are starting something new, you will not be great at it right away. You will be average, possibly below average. You will encounter people who are better than you. For someone whose identity was built on being exceptional, this ordinary beginning does not just feel discouraging. It feels like an identity threat. To protect yourself from that feeling, your mind installs a very clever defense. It tells you that you are not failing. You are simply not trying yet. You have not gotten serious yet. And so, as long as you delay, as long as you do not fully start, you never have to receive information about where you actually stand. The procrastination is not sloth. It is armor. Think of the old story of a young man given extraordinary wings who chose to fly far beyond where he had been warned. He climbed toward the sun not because he had earned the altitude, but because he was convinced he was beyond the rules that applied to everyone else. The heat did what it always does. It did not care how much potential he carried on his way up. When the gap between imagination and reality grows wide enough and stays wide long enough, the pattern tends to collapse into three very recognizable traps. The first trap is numbing. Any time the pressure of real life begins to build, any time that quiet alarm inside you goes off telling you that you are falling behind, your instinct is not to address it. Your instinct is to make it go away. You reach for a game, a feed, something on a screen, some form of stimulation that is immediately available and requires nothing from you. In the virtual world, you can be competent, even remarkable. When the screen goes dark, you return to a life that is the same as it was before you started. This is not rest. It is anesthesia. The second trap is running from commitment. In the beginning of anything, when everything is new and exciting and undefined, you tend to show up fully. But the moment a relationship or a project or a job begins to ask something real from you, begins to want consistency and accountability and presence over time, something in you begins to look for the exit. You will notice flaws that were not visible before. You will develop reasons why this is not quite right. You may even unconsciously find someone who is willing to absorb your responsibilities, to manage the adult weight of things, and settle into being cared for while telling yourself the situation is temporary. Over time, this dynamic costs both you and them more than either of you realizes at first. The third trap is blame. When the pressure from the outside world becomes unavoidable, the eternal youth pattern has a ready explanation waiting. The system is rigged. The economy is broken. Nobody gives anyone a fair shot anymore. Society punishes people like you. Yes, external conditions are sometimes genuinely difficult. Yes, some structures are unfair. But the trap is not in noticing those things. The trap is in making them the reason nothing moves forward. When you hand your agency over to your circumstances, you stop being someone who acts and become someone who waits. The discomfort of staying still feels safer than the risk of stepping forward. But recognizing these three traps is not a reason to pile shame on yourself. Shame keeps you in place. What recognition actually gives you is something more useful. It gives you the map of the invisible wall. And once you can see a wall clearly, you can start looking for the door. There are 4 real movements that can pull someone out of this pattern. The first is to completely reframe what growing up actually means. The eternal youth pattern survives on one very specific belief, which is that adulthood is where aliveness goes to die. That once you take on real responsibility, once you commit to a direction, something essential in you gets extinguished. But the opposite is true. Responsibility is not a cage, it is a container. And without a container, most things that could become something real simply evaporate. A person who writes when they feel like it never finishes a book. A person who works on an idea only when it excites them never builds the thing. Structure and commitment are not the enemies of your deeper self. They are what give your deeper self somewhere to actually land and become real. The second movement is learning to take ordinary things seriously. The pattern keeps you in the sky. You will not touch down there if you keep waiting for the worthy moment. So you have to deliberately start bringing yourself back to ground level. Make your space livable and keep it that way. Not as a performance, but because you live there. Handle your own practical responsibilities. Take a job, even one that seems beneath the image you carry of yourself, and do it well, completely, and with real attention. When you can bring your full care to something that does not feel special, you are building something more important than skill. You are building the psychological muscle that makes everything else possible. The third movement is deliberate exposure to real stakes. Because the core fear is finding out you are not good enough, the only real answer is to slowly, intentionally find out. Choose one thing you have been avoiding because you were afraid of the result. Submit the application. Send the first draft to someone whose opinion matters. Sign up for the class, knowing you will be the one in the room who does not yet know what everyone else knows. Have the honest conversation you have been postponing. When you do this, something important happens. You discover that the outcome, even when it is difficult, does not end you. Getting the feedback that you are not there yet does not mean you can never get there. A person's real character is not what they do when they are already winning. It is what they do in the moment after something real has gone wrong and they choose to get back up anyway. The fourth movement is finding external accountability that has no interest in your excuses. The eternal youth pattern is exceptionally good at internal negotiation. You will talk yourself out of things in ways that sound completely reasonable. That is why willpower alone is usually not enough at the start. You need people around you who will not accept a well-constructed reason for standing still. A mentor, a community, a structure that expects follow-through. Not because you cannot be trusted, but because the part of you that is still learning how to be an adult needs to feel the weight of real expectation before it starts to internalize that weight on its own. None of this is easy. None of it is supposed to be, but it is real. And it is the actual path, not a better playlist or a more aesthetic desk setup or another self-help video that you close and never return to. The difference between a person who made something of what they were given and a person who spent their life almost starting is not talent. It is not luck. It is whether they were willing to make contact with reality even when reality pushed back. You may have been living near the surface of your own life for a long time. Safe, comfortable, unthreatened, but also not quite there, not quite real, not quite present in the one story that is actually yours. This is the moment, not because something magical just unlocked, but because you are here, you heard this, and now you know what you are actually dealing with. There is a line worth sitting with that captures something essential about this whole pattern. The weight that presses most heavily on the next generation is the life that the previous one chose never to live. If you keep deferring your real life, what you are building is not just personal stagnation. You are quietly passing something on. The way you carry yourself, the choices you model, the weight you either face or avoid, all of it flows outward in ways you may not be tracking. If something in today's conversation found a part of you that recognized itself, let that recognition matter. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. and keep going.